I can tell you a little bit about my background. I've been in the manufacturing, retail, and distribution space for many years. I worked for Fortune 50 companies, and then I went to work for KPMG Pete Marwick and kind of cut my teeth in management consulting. And one of the areas that we found that had the greatest leverage was in this procurement and logistics area. If you take a peek at, by industry, there are very good data from a source that I use, which is CAPS, the Center for Advanced Purchasing Studies, and they will tell us what the percent of spend is relative to revenue. So, for example, a manufacturing company spends 47% of their revenue dollar on purchased items. So if we can do a small impact on the purchased items, it has a greater impact on the bottom line than increasing revenue by up to 30%. So if we reduce cost by 5%, it's the same impact on the bottom line as increasing the top line revenue 30%. Every industry is a little bit different, but the averages are anywhere from 40 to 80% of revenue. But the overall industry average is about 47%, so I just rounded off to 50. The other big cost component in products are the logistics piece, and that tends to be anywhere from 3.5 to 4.5% of revenue. So those are the two areas that we started being in tune with at Pete Marwick years ago. And what I found is that if we can leverage the buying power in these areas, then you can reduce costs significantly. For example, if you're a $100 million company and you have a certain leverage in the marketplace, well, if I create a consortium or a buying group of 10 of those companies, then I've got $1 billion in opportunity. So we're leveraging the spend in that category. Lately, I've been focusing on transportation cost, and I don't think that a collaborative is essentially new, but what is new is using today's technologies makes it a lot easier than it was back in the 90s. I built their practice in supply chain management when that term really wasn't very, it wasn't a term. I think we kind of invented it. It wasn't a term that was really out there in literature and so forth. That was in the 92 vintage, 95 vintage. Now it's commonplace. Everybody understands what supply chain management is. And a lot of that came out of, instead of looking at functional groups, we took a peek at processes, like the order to delivery cycle time or the design to market cycle times. And then that whole process orientation got pushed into supply chain management, and that means different things to different people. SCM means logistics or shipping to some people. SCM means procurement. But we look at the cradle to grave from when a product is sourced globally all the way through consumption or putting it into a landfill. So we're looking at all the raw materials as they move through all these networks, being converted to manufacture, being distributed, being staged on the retail shelf, being purchased, and then being consumed. And with this green phenomena going on, the ultimate disposal of these items and processing are important. What my group does today is I have a group that goes out and does the procurement or purchasing analysis, and then we look at a spend in an organization. We carve that up. We put them into categories, and then we go out and we'll either, one, help them source that, or leverage them with other companies to go out and create more of a volume buy with the company. The shipping piece of it is very, very important today. As you know, a lot of the manufacturers, their revenue is down anywhere from 5%, or I talked to a company this morning, their products shipped are down 60% over last year at this time. So instead of focusing on revenue, everybody's really focusing on cost right now. So it's a very timely service that we provide, and we do it through a variety of ways. I mean, we will do it individually by company, or we'll consolidate them and then take that spend and utilize various tools in the industry to to do that. For example, our freight rating tool will combine this buying power, and it will go out to about 50 carriers, and those carriers will have the opportunity to bid on that business. We have pre-negotiated, or on a monthly basis, we will go out and negotiate with all the carriers based on our volume as we accumulate it. So, we've gone from $1 to $500,000 to $12 million to $100 million a month in shipping. So we have a significant leverage with our, not only in the supply chain, but also with the carriers. So the carriers are happier, and also the clients share in that savings as well. So we're not only doing reselling, selling from a logistics standpoint, but are also finding better ways to ship in a more cost-effective way for the clients that get on board with this. I think what's unique is people are doing bits and pieces of this, but I don't think they're looking at it from a comprehensive perspective. And I don't want to give away too much of our strategy, but and again, I think a lot of people out there are doing bits and pieces of it, but we're looking at it not only in transportation spend, but we're going to come back around to this group and say, well, you all have a common theme in buying pallets or whatever item, packaging material, for example, or industrial chemicals, or et cetera, et cetera. Commerce One years ago, which I don't think they're in business today, they kind of got pushed into Ariba. They have a similar approach, and that's the strategy that we take. They're more of a software provider, where we're the full service entity, and we just utilize those tools.
And do you have any recommendations for companies that want to innovate as far as reducing or with their transportation spending, on how to reduce their transportation?
The recommendations are to leverage their spend with other companies that are similar in their niche. And that's absolutely the number one recommendation. The second would be to do that analysis of their shipping or their transportation spend dollar and benchmark that to other people in their industry. And we can, as I mentioned, the average is, why don't we just say 4% of revenue. If they find out they're spending 10% of revenue, then there's a big gap there, and they need to identify, what are the strategies to close that gap to get closer to the average. If you're at 2%, 3% of revenue, then you're best in class, best in breed. So there's a whole gap analysis that companies can do it internally. In purchasing and logistics professionals, they probably do this on the large volume or the top 20%, but I'm not so sure they have a convenient or a quick way to do it for every shipment. I think eBay was, the first ones to come out and create this auction scenario that's been around for years. I mean, the traditional approach is, here's our volume, farm it out, give us a bid, go through that process. Well, today it's much more quicker to do that. So, I would encourage everybody to do a nice spend analysis of, whatever category it is, whether it's transportation or commodity groups or stuff like that.